I just want to quickly talk about some of the language, the terms that I use to describe various techniques when I'm working with students and teaching guitar. When you're learning something new, there's a few challenges. You've got the physical challenges of actually, in this instance, putting your fingers in the right places and synchronizing your hands and things like that. You might have heard me talk about in some of my other videos. But with anything that you're learning new, one of the challenges is all the new language and the words that come with it, in order for you to be able to understand what's been said. So to avoid anyone getting left behind, or watching one of my videos or anybody else's videos and not quite understanding what they're talking about, there's just there's three things I want to just mention that I quite commonly talk about when I'm teaching, and they're going to be identifying the strings using numbers rather than the notes, describing which fret that we're going to play at, and building up slightly from that is the idea of something I call hand position, which I'll explain all of those things. If you're familiar with those, you probably don't need to watch any further, but I just wanted to make sure that we're touching base and everybody's understanding what I'm talking about in my videos, or as well my students that I work with in person. So to start with string numbers, one of the first things that you probably learn when you're first picking up a guitar in the first, as an absolute beginner, is that you need to tune your guitar, otherwise it's going to sound awful. So you need to tune each different string on the guitar to the appropriate note. In the case of a normal tuned guitar, and I say normal tuned because there are other ways you can tune a guitar. Everything I've done so far with my own students has been in standard tuning, which is from the thick string E, A, D, G, B and E. That's what's called standard tuning. As I said, there's different ways you can tune the guitar. There's quite a lot of different ways you can tune the guitar. This isn't the video for that, but we're just going to work in standard tuning for now. Another way of describing those notes, instead of using the note names, is by numbers. We've got 6 strings on this guitar, so I'll be calling them strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. In the order that they're numbered, I'm going to play the thinnest string, the furthest away from me as I'm looking down. That's going to be string 1. And then I'm going to work up the strings, so 2, 3, 4, 5, and finally the thickest string at the top, that's string 6. It might sound a little bit counterintuitive to begin with, because you think, well, that's the nearest one, why is it not 1? That's just the way it is, that's the way it's done. You'll see that in other tuition videos, if you look at sheet music and things like that, that's the convention for doing it. So obviously I'm going to stick with that, and that's the way that I describe them, because it's almost like a universal language. Why can we not just stick with the note names? You could do, but as I say, there's different tunings. So if I was to mention an E string or an A string, depending on how you tune your guitar, it may not be an E string or an A string, so you'd have to change the names of the string to suit. Common tuning is called drop D, where we tune the E string down to D. So in that case, my strings will be D, A, D, G, B, E. So that's one reason. Another reason, we've got 2 E strings on the guitar. We've got the thick E string and the thin E string. So automatically, if you weren't watching what I was doing and I said play an E string, you've got 2 choices, so you're going to have to figure out which one that I'm asking you to play. With the numbers it makes it simple, because if I want you to play the high string, I'd say play string 1, or your first string. Or if I want you to play the low E string, I'd say play string 6, or your 6th string. So it cuts out a lot of confusion by doing it that way. Not all guitars have 6 strings. Some guitars will have, I'm talking about conventional guitars now, may have 7 strings, 8 strings, in which case the numbering convention still works, because we start at the highest string and we number the strings upwards. On a bass guitar, I've got one behind me. Was actually asked by a student why the basses only have 4 strings and guitars have 6. Again, they don't always have 4 strings, but they normally do. But if you're talking about a bass guitar, it's the same again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a very easy, simple method of somebody being able to describe what to play to another person, which is what's important when we're learning guitar. Secondly, the frets. The frets, I've done a video on the different parts of the guitar that includes what the frets are, and I'll drop that below in the comments section, a link to that. But to save you having to watch all that, just for now, the frets are these little metal strips that run vertically across the fretboard, and they are what we use to differentiate between the different notes. So for example, if I play an open E string without playing anything with my fretting hand, my left hand, that's going to produce an E. If I use one of the frets, so I'm going to press down, I can play a G there, or any note along the fretboard. So in terms of how I describe these, if I play without my hand, that's classed as an open string. I'm using the low E or string 6 in this example, that's an open string. If I wanted to play the next note up, if I wanted you to play the next note up, I'd ask you to play your 6th string on the 1st fret. This is your 1st fret, so you're going to put your finger just behind the fret and play the note there with your finger. That's the same for any fret. If I asked you to play the 4th string on your 8th fret, so okay, the 4th string is there, I'll find my 8th fret, it's there, that's that note. So really simply, when I'm working with a student, I can describe what note I'd like you to play, and it's quite easy to understand just by the numbers. You could count the frets up. Eventually, once you get used to it, you don't need to count, you'll be aware of where you are, and also with the strings you'll know exactly which string to play. But as we're learning, it can be helpful to just be sure, and that gives you a counting system to be able to find that. Moving on from the frets themselves, where I'm describing to play notes, the final thing is something called hand position. What that means to me is your starting point from where you're going to play a piece. It might be a riff, or it might be a solo, it might be anything. But the way that I use the term hand position is if I ask you to play something starting at position 5, or at the fret 5 position, what that would mean is that you're going to find your 5th fret and use your 1st finger as a starting point. So in this case, if it was the 5th fret on the A string, or the 5th string, I'm going to be in that position. You could play that note using any of your fingers. You could use your little finger if you wanted, but that's not in position. And the reason I'd ask you to do that is because it will make it easier for the next notes that I'm going to ask you to play. So if I was to say play in the 5th position, it means that your 1st finger wants to be covering the notes on the 5th fret, and then your other fingers are free to play notes on higher frets above that. As an example, if I was going to show you a scale, I'll do an A minor pentatonic scale because that's based at the 5th fret. I'd ask you to start at the 5th position. So if I said that, you know that you're going to be starting with your 1st finger on the 5th fret position. So your hand position wants to be around there on the guitar. Normally when you're playing in position, you'd use the convention of 1 finger per fret. So in this position, I'll play on the E string now, the 6th string. I'll start in the 5th position and just play 4 notes up the frets, one at a time, which is similar to an exercise video that I've done. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that started in the 5th position. If I didn't tell you 5th position and just started off by saying, okay, your 1st note is on your 6th string at the 5th fret, you might decide to use any finger to do that, and that's going to trip you up for what comes next. So going back to the example, the A minor pentatonic scale. This isn't a lesson about the pentatonic scale for now, but I'm just going to play it as an example. I'm going to start at the 5th position, so my first finger is going to be playing the note at the 5th fret. The next note in the scale is on the 8th fret of your 6th string, so I need to use my little finger to play that, remembering the 1 finger per fret, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So to start the scale, and I'll go up the scale. You don't need to know this for now. And back down it. But because I've started in the correct position, hopefully you can see that my hand's not all over the place trying to find the notes. It gives me a good building base, so that again I'm minimising the amount of movement, the amount of effort I need to make, and my fingers are in the correct position. You don't always play 1 finger per fret. Sometimes when slightly more advanced pieces you might have to stretch a little bit further, but the idea of your starting position is the same. So when we start at any position, 5th position, 3rd position, 12th position even up here, that's your starting point. That should give you the best finger options and the easiest way to play the piece. Those are 3 points I'd like to make on this video. If you're working with a guitar teacher, or if you're learning off somebody else who's more experienced, just the final thing I wanted to say is don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand anything. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're trying to learn something and you're told something you don't understand or don't get, you're not going to learn past that point, because you're going to be confused about what they've said. What do they mean? It said start in the 7th position. What does that mean? Just ask. It's something that I really push on to the students that I work with. Stop. Just say stop. I don't get that. What do you mean? Can you explain it to me? No problem. That's what it's all about. So there's no daft questions. Whoever it is that's showing you this stuff, just ask them. If you're learning from my videos and there's something that I'm saying that you don't understand, just drop me a comment or a message. I'm quite happy to try and help you whatever I can. When I'm working with the students in my group, I'll try and answer any questions they've got for me. There's some questions that I don't know the answer to, in which case my response is pretty simple. I don't know the answer, I'm sorry. I'll find out and I'll get back to you, because I don't want to give them wrong information. I want to give them the correct info. So it's always okay to ask, because if you're not sure about one of the terms or one of the words that you've been told, it's just going to hold up your learning. So make sure you're familiar with the words that are used, that you're being asked to do, and that'll make your actual playing a lot easier.